Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Buddhang Saranang Gacchami. Dhammang Saranang Gacchami. Sanghang Saranang Gacchami. Dutiyampi Buddhang Saranang Gacchami. Dutiyampi Dhammang Saranang Gacchami. Dutiyampi Sanghang Saranang Gacchami. Tatiyampi Buddhang Saranang Gacchami. Tatiyampi Dhammang Saranang Gacchami. Tatiyampi Sanghang Saranang Gacchami. So again, welcome to all of you for this Sunday's Dhamma talk. And so last week we were beginning our talk on the basics of meditation and emphasizing the fact that, meditation isn't something you just do with your mind necessarily, although it is to a great extent. But meditation, you could say, is half physical and half mental. And that regards being able to sit in a decent posture to keep the back and the head in a straight line, basically to keep the spinal column straight, because that's where the major nerves that connect the sense organs or the external world connected to our mind. And that's where, a large part of meditation takes place, especially mindfulness meditation, and learning how to be aware of the various sensations and sensory stimulation coming through the nervous system, and also to stay awake. So whenever you slouch and the head goes down, not sitting straight, then usually the mind is in a kind of a daydreamy or a half sleepy state, not very alert. So the effort in being mindful of the posture and to keep the posture, keep the back and the spine straight, that's the sort of the physical part of it. And also to have a good flexibility. And this is where I mentioned that, yoga exercise or other disciplines like Tai Chi and Qigong, which are exercises that also get the energy moving in the body. All this is very helpful for setting up the basic environment for the meditation to happen. Otherwise, if you just sit down with a stiff body and not very good circulation and very kind of poor, shallow breathing, then you'll have to fight a lot more against the hindrances and against pains and drowsiness and low energy. So, physical pains are one of the hindrances too. And a lot of pain is because of, the energy in the body being blocked and impeded to reach out all the cells, so that having a good flexibility is also helpful for that. So that's sort of setting up the basic posture, whether you're sitting on the floor cross-legged or you're sitting on a chair. The main thing is, again, keeping the back straight and the chin lifted up level so that the nervous system is most opportune point or condition. And then we, so this body is considered the, the home for this mind, even though the main objective, deeper aspects of meditation are to learn how to subdue one's erratic thoughts and to overcome the hindrances and to bring the mind to a state of being centered and grounded in the body. So the first stage of meditation is learning how to center the mind in the body and using the breathing. So we talked about developing mindfulness of breathing, and then also of the posture, and all of the mindfulness of the breathing and attention to the posture helps to get the mind reconnected to the present moment, because the body is considered the natural connection to the present moment, and present moment means awareness. It's a vibration of consciousness, or it's a state of awareness that's not getting pulled back and forth between the past and the future. So both the breathing and or the body, or a combination of both of those are all equal. We use as anchors to the present moment, because the body is always in the present moment. And then learning how to develop both concentration and mindfulness are the first two mental qualities that we cultivate, that are cultivated in the practice of meditation. And mindfulness is that essential alertness of attention. So that's where the importance of learning how to sit straight, so that the nervous system in its most optimal alert condition and can relay all the sense impressions that are coming through the senses, relay them quickly to the brain where consciousness is registered, where you have feeling and perception, and where our thoughts originate from. So that first stage of meditation is developing concentration and mindfulness. And we talked about briefly, the mindfulness in the practice of concentration, going, attaining different levels of jhana concentration. But mindfulness and concentration, we have to balance them. And so the mindfulness is that, being able to be aware of the breathing, but concentration is kind of focusing more exclusively on the breathing. But at the same time, mindfulness has to be alert to the posture. If the head is starting to slouch down or bend forward, then you have to be mindful, and you have to straighten back up in order to help keep the mind in its most alert position. And also mindfulness to your thoughts. When the mind starts getting caught up in daydreams or other thoughts, then you have to be attentive to that and be aware, yes, thinking, let go of the thoughts, come back. And so the mindfulness basically is the mindfulness to the hindrances. The objects of our mindfulness is, especially in the beginning levels of meditation, but even in advanced levels too. And the objects of our mindfulness are the hindrances that are trying to take us away from the present moment. And the present moment is the natural condition of our consciousness and awareness whenever it's not distracted by the hindrances. So today I also wanted to talk about the hindrances too, a little bit later. But so from that first stage of meditation is to use the breathing, practicing anapanasati, mindfulness of breathing, whether you're concentrating to feel the sensation of the air touching or going through the nostrils, or if you focus your attention on the rising and falling or the expanding and contracting movements of the abdomen, stomach, rib cage, or the chest. When you observe the breathing, these are naturally what you feel. That's how we know that we're breathing, because we feel that expansion and contraction of that part of the body, of the lungs. And that's a little bit easier to focus on than trying to focus at the very subtle touch of air moving through the nostrils. And so the people can choose which of those 2 points of concentration that they want to use. Those are the 2 kind of popular forms of focusing the attention found within the Buddhist samatha and vipassana practice. But I want to also mention that, okay, I mentioned the 2 primary powers of the mind, mindfulness and concentration, but then there's a third one, the wisdom. So mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom is the full progress of the meditation. And a person can start with practicing mindfulness and then gain concentration and then wisdom, or a person can start with concentrating first, and through that, without getting stuck in one-pointed concentration, using that concentration to expand and be more mindful of the moment-to-moment impressions coming through the senses, and developing the wisdom through that. So those 2 methods of meditation, one is called the Samadhi Vipangama Vipassana method, and the other is the Vipassana Pubangama Samadhi method. That means practicing concentration first, and then using that calmness of mind to then develop insight and wisdom into anicca, dukkha, and anatta. Or so people who have more difficulty in straight away trying to just concentrate their mind and hold it onto one point, then they can use the general mindfulness and the moment-to-moment attention to the breathing, and then the other sensations that are coming and going, and to develop insight, a certain level of insight first, and through that also the mindfulness, they're able to then gain the concentration, because the objects of mindfulness are the hindrances. So if you're not aware of the hindrances, you won't gain concentration. And if you're mindfulness of the hindrances, then you will automatically gain concentration. So depending on a person's temperament, then these are the 2 general ways that people might approach the development of wisdom. Now, the development of wisdom is sort of the crowning glory, you might say, in well, the culmination of the practice of meditation, especially following the 4 foundations of mindfulness, and in the Buddhist teaching in general, the wisdom into anicca, dukkha, and anatta, and the attainment, that wisdom that leads to the attainment of the stages of enlightenment. Now, so the wisdom then is, it's sort of the real goal of practicing meditation, the real goal of developing mindfulness and concentration is for the purpose of developing these liberating insights, and or the wisdom. And wisdom is part of right understanding. As I mentioned before in other talks, maybe even last week, the 3 levels of wisdom. The first level is intellectual wisdom. Then there's the deeper level of wisdom that comes through reflecting on what you might have studied or read about. When you start practicing meditation, concentration, and mindfulness, you start getting some insights about the nature of the mind and the nature of impermanence. And so you reflect on that. You reflect how this body is in a constant state of change, this mind, the five aggregates are in a constant state of change that we can see to a certain extent. And so what used to be just purely intellectual wisdom, oh, five aggregates, oh yeah, cool, neat, you know, but actually being able to start seeing them operating within your own body and mind, like looking through a microscope. And so you use that Chintamaya Panya, develop Chintamaya Panya, or the wisdom that comes through reflection and observation. And then finally, there's the deepest level of insights, what are called the Bhavanamaya Panya, that are basically these, the deep insights that lead to the realization of entering the stream, once returning, never returning, and then full enlightenment, these deep penetrating insights into anicca, dukkha, and especially of anatta, seeing through the illusion of the I, me, mine consciousness, and experiencing that liberating awareness that's temporarily liberated from thoughts of I, me, and mine, and others, and so on. So anyway, just briefly, it's that those three levels of wisdom are employed. Now, most people can't just immediately go and get the Bhavanamaya insights because it depends on weakening the hindrances and developing mindfulness and concentration and weakening the hindrances when those deeper meditative insights arise. So that's why the intellectual wisdom kind of gets you started, pricks your interest to want to learn meditation. Then as you start meditating, you get these meditative insights that further your confidence and increase your desire to meditate even more. And then finally, when the spiritual faculties and the factors of enlightenment are developed, then you get these the deeper Bhavanamaya Panya, the levels of liberating insights. So now these, you could say these three aspects of practice, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom, that's the way you normally read them, but they correspond with the three levels of wisdom that I was just mentioning. So normally you start with, the way most people hear about the Dhamma and get interested in meditation because they read some books about it or they hear lectures about it, and it pricks their interest. So they read some more and they get a intellectual understanding, and they hear a few talks and, oh yeah, oh boy, I want to start meditating. So at least that gets them to start meditating. And so that intellectual wisdom kind of comes first. Without that, most people wouldn't think about even meditating, especially in the Western countries where it wasn't not very common. So it was our hearing about it that pricked interest. So getting some intellectual understanding. And so you have the wisdom coming first. That means that intellectual wisdom. Then you practice mindfulness or concentration or both. And then you gain the deeper levels of wisdom. And as you're practicing mindfulness and concentration, you're gaining that second level of reflective wisdom. When you're reflecting on the Dhamma in meditation and understanding the concepts of meditation at a kind of a deeper level, like a scientist looking through a microscope. And you might have intellectually studied about cells and atoms and molecules in biology class and so on. But when you actually start looking through a microscope and you actually start seeing them and as they move around, then that's a whole another level, right? So that's the same way as what the intellectual understanding gets you started. But when you actually start meditating and developing concentration, turning up the power of the microscope, and you start seeing how the law of karma is working in your body and mind, and the interaction of body and mind at a slightly deeper level. And and that in turn develops your wisdom to another level. And then that wisdom comes back around again to help your mindfulness and concentration be even better. And as your mindfulness and concentration gets better, your wisdom gets deeper, because mindfulness and concentration is like turning up the power of the microscope more and more. That means we say mindfulness and the concentration holds the mind steady so that the mindfulness can be brighter and brighter. So that's why they have to work in conjunction. And also the mindfulness helps the mind not to get stuck in the bliss of samadhi. Because if you get too concentrated without mindfulness, then you can get kind of caught in the euphoria, and the progress of the meditation can stagnate. So the mindfulness helps to get stuck, not to get stuck in that deep quietness that can come from exclusive concentration and other things that can happen during those deeper levels of concentration. And so that wisdom comes back around again and makes concentration and mindfulness stronger, which in turn makes the wisdom deeper. And that comes back around to help to make the concentration and mindfulness even stronger. And out of that comes the deeper levels of wisdom. So they keep on circling around each other until finally those deeper levels of penetrative insight into anicca, dukkha, and anatta come about, or when the spiritual faculties and the factors of enlightenment that I'll mention, give a talk about later, or even in the Sutta study classes that we're going to be having too, we'll be mentioning those. They're covered in the Satipatthana Sutta as well. So understanding, how that process works is also part of the sort of the intellectual understanding, because it gives you a kind of a clear focus of what meditation is. Otherwise, people sit down and meditate and just want to concentrate, and okay, maybe they do get into a state of concentration, but it's kind of just, oh, this feels nice and it's very quiet, but it doesn't go on to really develop wisdom. And a lot of people can kind of get stuck in just a kind of a mediocre, low-level type of concentration without too much wisdom. For a lot of people, it doesn't go too much even beyond that. So to have a clear idea of the whole process of meditation is important. Now, having said that, the main things that block our ability to meditate are the 5 hindrances. And so I want to talk a little bit about that, because until the 5 hindrances are weakened to a certain extent and eventually overcome, then the meditation won't, go very deep, because the hindrances are which block the meditation. And so, I've given this simile before. Let's say if you have a glass of water, let's say somebody scoops up a glass of water from, a dirty gutter water, or a dirty pond, a muddy pond, and they put the glass of water on a table. And, if they haven't seen water before, clear water, they might think that water is a brown color. Or even if they know water is clear, but the muddy water is there and they can't really see through the other side of the glass. So, but if you leave the glass on the table without shaking the table or without the wind blowing it or disturbing that, after 30 minutes, 1 hour or so, the mud or the other debris or dirt in the water begins to settle down to the bottom of the glass. And then the water becomes clear. And then you can see through the glass to the other side. Or at least you realize, oh, water is not brown color. Water is clear color. Well, the same with our consciousness. We don't know much about what our consciousness is. All we do, we just see things and react to things, and we just think it's me doing these things. We have really no idea of really what consciousness is from any meditative kind of understanding or spiritual understanding, and the different levels of consciousness. So, those first stages of meditation, developing mindfulness and concentration, are for the purpose of helping to weaken those hindrances so that they subside. Now, these 5 hindrances, I think most of you probably know them because you're dealing with them a lot during your meditations, are the first one is given as sensual desire. Now, that's basically the attraction to the sensory objects of the world. And one of the biggest ones is sensual desire for bodies, somebody else's body, and we see the marks of the beauty, and we get attached to the external marks of the beauty. And I was mentioning that last week as part of mindfulness of the body. But it's not only that, it's sensual desire, thinking about, oh, what am I going to eat tonight? Oh, I want to have various types of food, or, desire for listening to music or other sounds, desire for smells, tastes, and even for erotic body sensations. So the mind is always trying to seek out these pleasing objects to stimulate its sensual desire. So even in meditation, you might be trying to focus on your breath, but you start thinking about maybe somebody's body that you have desire for, or whatever, or you're thinking about food, what you're going to eat, or these other sensory objects as I just mentioned, and they take you away from the present moment. So as long as our mind is getting caught up in the sensual desires, usually it's the remembering a sensual desire from the past and then projecting it with the desire to get it again in the future. And the mind goes back and forth. So that's what allows us not to gain too much concentration in the beginning. Now, because that's only one of them. So I'm going to talk more about the 5 hindrances in the Sutta study class on Wednesday night. So if you're interested more in that, you can listen on Wednesday evening. And then the second hindrance is ill will. And that's sort of the opposite of the sensual desire. It's the aversion to the 5 sensory impingements, but especially directed towards person that you don't like, grudges and resentments toward people that come up that harmed you or wronged you in the past. So you think about them and develop ill will, and I'm going to get even with that person, or just other thoughts. But it can also be ill will toward the flies that are buzzing around your head, or ill will toward that pain in your body that's disturbing you. It's really any kind of aversion toward any of the sense objects, but primarily directed towards persons, because that's where we have so much of our karmic entanglement, having grudges, resentments, and bad memories toward various people throughout our whole life that have done things to us, and they come up. So, but I wanted to give these similes also of the simile given to sensual desire is like colored water. If you have a bowl of water and you have various colored dyes in it, then all you see is the color in the water. You can't see your reflection. And so you wanted to see the reflection of your face in the bowl of water. So that colored water and the dyes, prevent you from really seeing the reflection of your face. All you see is the color. So when our mind is clinging to sensual desire, that's all we see is that object. Oh, I want that object, I want that. And it fills up our mind. So the simile of the colored water for sensual desire. And for ill will, it's like boiling water. So when the mind is boiling with, aversion and resentment or struggling to get away from something, then also, like when you look into boiling water, all you see is the bubbles coming up. So when our mind is obsessed by ill will and anger or resentment, all we see is that churning mind. So sense desire and ill will, those are some of the strongest hindrances. From the thoughts angle, from our thoughts. And then another of the hindrances is sloth and torpor. That means mental lethargy and body fatigue. So feeling, physically tired and also mentally tired. Our body could, be fairly okay, not really tired, but the mind could be tired and just dull, and not want to do anything, not want to concentrate or be alert. And there's various reasons for that. I'll cover that in the Sutta class. But basically, it's the kind of the drowsiness, so you're trying to meditate and then, you notice the head kind of going down like this. And so it's like a half sleepy state or just lost in your daydreams. But usually it's kind of that mental and physical laziness. And the simile of that is like a pond of water covered over with green slime and algae and moss that's covering the surface of the water. So when our mind is beset by sloth and torpor, it's like, we can't see anything. If you try to look into the water, you can't see your reflection. So that's the hindrance of the sloth and torpor. The fourth one is restlessness and worry. And this is usually because we're restless and worry because we've done things in the past we shouldn't have done, or we haven't done things in the past that we should have done, or because we've broken the precepts. Our mind is restless and worried that we're going to get found out, we're going to get caught for telling a lie or stealing something or sleeping with somebody else's husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, or whatever, or intoxicating the mind and doing foolish things. So it's usually that, always, am I going to get find out? We're looking over the shoulder and somebody's going to, find out you did these unskillful actions. And there could be other reasons for it too. But basically, it's just not being able to sit down. It's kind of that fidgetiness. You're sitting down and you're kind of just, getting, annoyed by various little unpleasant sensations or, wanting to, what time is it? Out of boredom, restless, what am I going to do next? You want to do something next. So you're getting restlessness or worrying about those things I mentioned. So we're going to talk about the antidotes, how to use antidotes for these, but I'll cover them in the Sutta class on Wednesday night. And the restlessness and worry is like the surface of a pond whipped up by wind. So if a strong wind is blowing, or the chop in the ocean, or during a storm, right? The water and the waves on the ocean. So if you look into the water that's stirred up by the wind, then you cannot see the clear reflection, your reflection, or the clear mirror-like surface of the water. And then doubts, having doubts. This is primarily doubts about whether, meditation is really the way to, purifying the mind, or doubts about, the Buddha, did he really exist or not, or doubts about yourself. Can I really do this? I don't know, or, especially if you believe, it's come from different religious traditions, then, where they talk maybe, different, might talk down about, other religions and saying, oh, meditation, that's from, the devil or whatever. There's different beliefs and ideas out there, that could put doubts into people's minds about whether, they could actually do it, or whether it's worthwhile the effort. So those doubts prevent you from, giving the practice your, giving it your best shot, right? So it prevents you from really going beyond a certain level, because they'll come up, or that energy isn't enough, because the doubts kind of hold you back, your energy from exerting the effort to overcome the hindrances. So the doubts basically are overcome by developing insights, of course, and through the practice of meditation, you overcome your doubts. But when the mind is caught up in doubts, the simile of the water is a muddy water. So water that's stirred up by the mud, and if you look down in the water, you can't see the clear reflection. All you see is the brown, murky mud. So those 5 hindrances, probably 90 or even 95% of what most people call meditation is dealing with how to overcome or weaken these 5 hindrances. When you're trying to develop concentration, or whether developing mindfulness, those hindrances are always going to come up, and you'll have to expend energy in dealing with them. Because if you don't, then you could sit for a whole hour, and you're lucky to have even 5 minutes of anything what you could call clear concentration, if the mind is beset by these hindrances. And usually one of the hindrances will predominate at any one time. But in one meditation period, they could change, You could have sensual desires at the beginning, and then, after a bit, you could have ill will, thoughts come up, and then you could be tired and kind of sleepy, or start worrying about something. And in one meditation period, there's the new kind of a medical term for meditators that we came up with is what's called a MHA, multiple hindrance attack. So, some people could have 2 or 3 of these hindrances going on at the same time. Like if you might have ill will toward yourself, I can't concentrate. Why can't I concentrate? And you get, or this body, why has this body got so much pain? So you could be having, different things going on, or within a very short period of time, you could, have these various hindrances. And so there are antidotes given by the Buddha, different ways of reflecting and also conducting your life, that are like, different medicines in your medicine cabinet that you can try when hindrances arise. I've already covered this in some previous talks about dealing with distracting thoughts and so on. But I'm going to try to cover it in more detail in the Sutta class. But anyway, so those 5 hindrances, those are really what most people deal with for a long period of time when they initially start meditating. And the Buddha has, likened these hindrances to a person in prison. Let's say a person who had, lived a life, who was free and could do anything they want. Then for some reason they get put in prison. they do a crime, put in prison. Then they're in prison, and you can imagine all the horrible conditions in prison, no freedom and everything. And so for many years, if you were in prison and all of a sudden you got out, you would feel quite good, right? I mean, theoretically, you go outside the prison walls and be able to go where you want to go and breathe fresh air and not having all this threat of violence all around you all the time, and so on. So you would feel like it would be very free. So that's a simile given to when the mind is freed from the hindrances. You have that feeling. It's that kind of freeing feeling that you experience. Even when they just subside, even a little bit, you start to feel that lightness in meditation. You start to feel a tranquil feeling coming into the nervous system. Or another simile is given is having had an illness. Now let's say people getting this coronavirus. So before the virus, maybe they were pretty healthy and everything, and then they got could be any kind of sickness, but let's say this example, and then they felt miserable. They couldn't hardly breathe, and their bodies was aching, and they had all these symptoms and coughing, and couldn't leave the house, right? Have all this almost like a self-imprisonment, self-isolation. But then when they finally get over that, now you can go out, people are going to feel a lot freer. So in the same way, when the mind is freed from the 5 hindrances, you feel that mentally, that freedom and the brightness of the natural mind arises because you're free from sloth and torpor. And you're free from restlessness and worry, and the mind experience that bright clarity and kind of purity of awareness at that point, even if it's for a short period of time. So again, next week I'm going to be talking more about that. So once the mind is freed from the hindrances, now it may not be free. You're not going to be free all of a sudden. Over a long period of time, they get weaker. But with each little weakening of the hindrances, the mind will experience a greater level of clarity. And your concentration will improve and your mindfulness will improve. And then the weakening of the hindrances is when you get more insights. And so the wisdom deepens. And then that allows you to see where you can tighten up your living and sila a little bit more. And then because of, having more self-discipline, and your concentration and mindfulness gets deeper, and then the wisdom gets deeper. And that allows you to have a better sila. That means the hindrances will weaken less and less. You're becoming more contented and less greedy for sensual pleasure. You're becoming more inwardly content. But anyway, this occurs over a long period of time. Could even be many years. Many people go through that. So anyway, it's a gradual progress. But one can tell when one is making progress, because you can definitely notice that the mind is more kind of calm and peaceful. So when the hindrances get weakened, that's when the concentration and mindfulness and the wisdom start working more at a more deeper level. And that's when you can then shift the attention to developing the insight into impermanence. So coming back to the actual practice of the meditation, once you've gotten the mind centered in the present moment, feeling the breathing body, then normally we try to stay with the breathing until the breathing stays kind of in our mind almost automatically without kind of trying. And that's called the vitaka and the vichara, the jhanic factors, of when it no longer takes an effort to really concentrate. The mind kind of gets that applied and sustained thought gets established, that means you don't have to make so much effort to focus on it. So the breathing kind of stays there in the back of the mind. So now you can focus more on the body and sensations, but that breathing, that connection to the breathing in the background helps to keep the mind steady. And so that you can start to open up and feel the impermanence, especially starting with the body, see how so many the sensations are coming and going. And tune in, develop the mindfulness of feelings, and observe the thoughts more clearly. So the practice of vipassana really starts when you start observing how quickly the mind moments are coming and going, or seeing how quickly different sensations are just coming and going, how they trigger off the feelings and the thoughts in the mind, and being able to watch that process kind of with more detachment. So it's the concentration that helps you to watch that process with detachment. That's the function of the concentration. It keeps the hindrances at bay and allows you to observe the process of impermanence with more equanimity, and to see how quickly they come and go. And so the shift of the attention then it gets shifted to impermanence rather than just watching the breath. Gradually you're shifting over, starting with the body. And I gave a body scan, a meditation 1 or 2 weeks ago, and it will perhaps do again. But that's sort of the beginning aspect of developing the anicca, what is called anicca sanya. And this is the deeper level of developing wisdom. And it starts with the body, and because there's so many sensations that are constantly coming and going all over the body, little itches and prickling sensations, little aches and pains, and you can observe them without getting upset by them because of the concentration. It's that mind having attained the present moment state of concentration, whether the breathing is there or maybe the breathing is kind of vanished, but the mind is resting there in the present moment, allowing you to see the reality as it is, how the body is just millions and millions of sensations coming and going at a very high speed, but without reacting to them. Normally we react to them with liking, disliking, and so on. And then because of the sensations, they trigger off our thoughts about them. Maybe if you're pain in the knee, then you start thinking, oh, my knee, if I sit 10 minutes longer, maybe I'll be crippled or something. And then you'll start worrying about it, or you hear a sound and the mind gets carried away by a sound. But you train yourself just to see how each moment arises and passes away, but without clinging on to it. I mean, initially you see how the mind clings on to a particular sensation or a sound or a thought, but that's where you apply the insight and gradually pry the mind off of that object. It's like a child, right? A young child, a toddler. He's going around and all the world is all new to them, so he reaches out and tries to grab something, maybe a sharp object or something that could break, and the mother has to come by and say, oh dear, please, and gently pull the hand and try to, get him to let go, because the child doesn't know what it's doing. Or it might put some object, dirty object in the mouth, or a pin or something. It happens all the time because the child doesn't know what it's doing. So our mind doesn't know what it's doing. It's, latching on to all these objects with attachment, aversion, desire. And so the mindfulness is like the mother that comes by and says, this sound is impermanent. It's not going to bring you any real benefit. And so why don't you just let go of it? And it helps you to, let go and stop following the sound. or thinking about, and to keep coming back to the present moment. So basically, our mind is, our whole world is nothing but a flow of different mind moments of hearing, seeing, tasting, smelling, touching, and thinking that are coming and going in quick succession. And this is really the beginning of the anicca sanya, or developing the perception of impermanence. And the first deep insight is called the insight into rise and fall, or seeing how quickly these moments of hearing, seeing, tasting, smelling, touching, and thinking, or the five aggregates, form, feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness, are coming and going, rapidly, very rapidly. And that is what our world is made up of, basically. And the ability to observe that with a calm mind is what really begins to deepen the insights. And I'm going to be talking more about this later in further talks, and in deepening the perception of impermanence and how that leads to the experience of anatta. But I'll leave that for probably the talk next week. And as I mentioned on Wednesday night, I'm going to be covering a number of suttas, mostly from the Anguttara Nikaya, dealing with the 5 hindrances. And I'll be putting a link to this book. Actually, there's a very nice book written by Venerable Nyanaponika Mahathera, a German Pali scholar. He lived in Sri Lanka in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. I knew him also myself when I first came to Sri Lanka. And he's written a very, put together a very nice, beautiful book on the hindrances, dealing with them and various aspects of them that a lot of people don't hear too much about. And it's all in one little power-packed book, so I'm going to go over that and recommend that for reading too, because again, it's the hindrances and getting caught by them is what slows down our progress of the meditation. So having said that much now, I want to see if there's any questions that any of you might have before we go on then to our meditation practice. So I'm wondering, Prashant, is there any questions that came up on the chat? I don't see them. Are you out there, Prashant? Okay, it looks like we may not have any questions. I'll give a minute more, a couple minutes more, see if anybody has a question. Okay, here's one question. Is it wise to focus on eliminating the hindrances off the cushion as much as on the cushion? Absolutely, absolutely. Because, having the hindrances in our waking life and out in the world is also a reason why we also might do unskillful thought, speech, and actions, use unskillful speech towards somebody or break any of the other precepts. But learning how to do it when you're in meditation is a training for then being able to catch yourself and apply the same kind of right effort when you get caught up in these hindrances in your daily life as well. And especially the antidotes, the things that you do in your daily life. So this is what I'll be covering in the Sutta study on Wednesday, are things that you can do in your daily life that affect and increase the the likelihood of the hindrances arising than when you try to meditate. Because the reason why they come up in meditation is because they are operating in your body and mind in the larger world, in your waking life too. So yeah, that's why mindfulness is supposed to be cultivated in all four postures, sitting, standing, walking. That means in our day-to-day activity, and the clear comprehension that I talked about in the last sutta class about the mindfulness of the body. Mindfulness and clear comprehension of movements. Why am I going here? Where am I going now? Is that going to be useful or not? Is it going to stir up my sensual desire or ill will or something like that? And if it is, you don't go there. You change what you are going to do. So yes, that's practicing in the daily life. This question, can you speak to how we may be deluding ourselves into believing we are more advanced in our practice than we really are? Well, there's a mirror of the Dhamma. And some people ask the Buddha this, and he said, what's a mirror for? Well, it's seeing the reflection. So when you look into your mind, if you see any of these hindrances are increasing and not decreasing, that means your practice isn't going the way it should. But if you see the hindrances are decreasing and the wholesome states of mind are increasing, then you can be fairly assured that your practice is going in the right direction. And it takes a certain degree of insight to notice the subtle delusions, because yes, a lot of people naturally, they like to think they're more advanced than they are. I mean, even whether meditators or not. But a lot of it is sort of, can be delusion. And they're very subtle, because the ego is very subtle in creating these types of subtle delusions. That's why mana and conceit is not eliminated until the attainment of full enlightenment. And so even somebody who's attained the second and third stage could be subtly deluded and caught by the I am conceit, even thinking, oh, I'm better than the next person. I'm a better meditator than that monk or this other person, subtle types of pride and so on. So, yeah. So beginners with a high level of anxiety deal with a lot of agitation. Some give up because they get irritated. Metta meditation or yoga movements can help, or starting with 10 minutes. Yes, yoga and meditation can help you to hopefully relax a bit in agitation. But a lot of this is interesting, that even diet now, they're doing a lot of research with children. And they found that, children get irritated or with ADHD and all that, and violence is due to some vitamin deficiencies too, And so, that's again where, meditation isn't just, trying to control your mind. There's lots of things affecting our body and mind. And even food and environment is one of them. Pollution and other types of things, and even diet, or you're high on sugar and other things can make you more, kind of agitated and other things. So there's a lot of things that could be looked at, especially if a person has some chronic conditions. It may be more than just not doing exercise or just, that you can't concentrate. There's some other organic deficiencies that could be working there as well. So we also have to check up on that. Excuse me if the table was wobbling. Okay. But yeah, doing yoga and some, especially deep breathing. That's why in all my meditations, I always have people starting with deep, slow breathing. And, you know, if you can do 5 minutes or so, or coordinate the deep, counting the breaths from 1 to 10 with deep, slow breathing, it's a wonderful way to help to get concentrated and to relax, get centered in the body. And I just read an article that popped up on my, cell phone the other day about how, doctor wrote a book about, deep breathing, how deep breathing is a wonderful thing, but no one has ever taught that really, how, doing 5 or 10 minutes of deep, slow breathing is almost a, very excellent way of learning how to calm down and get centered and there's a lot of good benefits for developing deep, slow breathing. That's, part of yoga practice too. So it's all about, trying to create a good foundation. It's not just me that's meditating, but we have to see that, this body and mind is just a magnetic flow of energy, really, when you come down to the basic levels. And it's affected by everything, by food, climate, and sensory stimulation and everything else. It's not just a matter of me sitting down and doing that. Otherwise, you get very frustrated and give up after a while if you don't integrate your whole practice. Is a good recommendation on how long one should stay on the meditation of the breath before going to sensations of the body. Some mention that to stay at least from 100 breaths or more. Well, certainly yes. But I would say, as I mentioned before, just counting the breaths from 1 to 10. And once you get up to 10, to reverse the count from 10 back to 1. That without getting lost. But you have to be honest with yourself. Even getting lost for just a second or two. When you can develop that concentration where you don't miss a beat, and you see the whole in-breath from beginning to end and the brief pause, and you see the whole out-breath from beginning to end and the brief pause. Now, some thoughts might come and go in the back of the mind, but you don't get kind of carried away by them. It doesn't break your concentration on the breathing. So if you can really count from 1 to 10, especially if you're doing slower, deep breaths, where you're only taking about 5 breaths in a minute, then by the time you get up to 10, that's already a few minutes. And if you reverse the count from 10 back to 1, because that makes you have to be more concentrated. Otherwise you get confused. Oh, 8, 9, 7, oh. And so reversing the count helps you to stay more focused. But there's different ways of doing it. Whether you want to count from 1 to 100, 1 to 10 several times. The main thing is being able to do that without the hindrances coming in. So once you can do that and you feel the momentum of thoughts and you feel that initial kind of pleasant feeling arising, then it's up to you. A person could then keep doing the breathing awareness longer, or at that time, it would be sufficient then to turn on to the body, more body awareness and noticing the various sensations and gradually developing that awareness of the larger body and the subtler sensations, to notice subtler and subtler sensations that are occurring in the body, because that leads you to being aware of your thoughts too, and noticing the thoughts as they're, and urges as they come up. You notice an urge to want to move, and you can notice that, relax around it, and so on. So yeah, it depends on each person. So there's no definitive rule about how long. Some teachers say, oh, you have to stay until you reach the 4th jhana. I don't necessarily agree with that. But, if a person wants to do that, they can. But you can attain the 4th jhana through practicing mindfulness too. Once you, it is said that normally when you reach the stage of Khanika Samadhi, which is the ability to remain in the present moment, noticing the things coming and going in the present moment without getting too distracted, that is the time that is a good time. Whether you've reached the jhanic level or not you can still start practicing then the more moment-to-moment attention and so on. The question about pain, how to focus on pain, about whether you should ignore the pain or, I don't think you can ignore pain in the beginning because it's very difficult to ignore pain in the beginning. You can develop equanimity to it later, but I usually recommend to observe those painful sensations and try to relax the body around them and notice how the mind is tensing up when you observe the pain, and to watch the pain in the mind. More important than watching the pain in the body is how the mind is reacting to the pain, because that's where the suffering is arising, is from the mind's resistance to the pain. So you don't want that pain, you're struggling. And it's that struggling mind, the mental reaction, that actually makes the pain seem worse. So you have to relax the mind, look at the mind as much as you just look at the physical sensation. And you have to develop a tolerance gradually as you increase the amount of time you can sit without moving and wanting to get rid of it. You gradually increase tolerance to it, and you'll be able to then develop an equanimity to it and kind of just let it be there in the background, but continue on with the other aspects of the meditation. And I would recommend doing some yoga and deep breathing before sitting to meditate, because that will help to minimize the onset of the pain. Because again, much of the pains and discomforts are due to the energy being blocked because of stiffness of the joints and shallow breathing and so on. So somebody had a comment about, wanted to add something about the influence of the diet on the meditation. Like things like, drinking too much caffeine or eating too much sugar or just overeating, or if not drinking enough water all day. These are also things that, yes, have an impact on the practice. If you're not drinking enough water, the body becomes dehydrated, and there's going to be certain problems probably arising because of that, or you eat too much, depending on the person, too much caffeine, too much sugar, other types of things that I mentioned. These all, you have to become sensitive to yourself and aware of what affects you. And then if you see certain things that you're doing affect you in not a good way, you have to make the effort to overcome these kind of habits, whether it's drinking too much coffee, or it's eating too much sweets, or it's overeating. Overeating is a big part of this sleepiness. That's why in meditation monasteries, they don't allow people to eat in the evening, because eating one good meal a day is actually all the person really needs, except for, of course, if somebody has low blood sugar or some other sort of chronic condition, maybe. But usually eating once a day, that frees up the energy so that when you meditate, you're not thinking about food, where my next meal is going to come from, and so on. And also snacking in between too. That's why monks have rules against that sort of thing, snacking in between, eating anytime you want. It helps the mind becomes more detached. Anyway, I think we're going to bring these questions to an end, because we still want to have our meditation session. What are the Pali terms for arising and falling, ceasing? Well, the Udaya Bhanga. Udaya means rising up, Bhanga means ceasing. So those are the two terms that are often used. Samudaya and the Bhanga. There's a certain level of doubt that is beneficial, that level 2 wisdom you're referring to. For example, to avoid feeling like a good meditator. Or is doubt always a hindrance? Well, feeling like you're a good meditator is not necessarily doubt. You might be a good meditator, but that could be a subtle pride. So it's not necessarily a doubt. You could have good meditation, but to feel prideful about it could be a hindrance, or it could not be a hindrance. I wouldn't worry about it too much in the beginning. I'll give you an example from my own experience. In the first meditation course I took in Nepal, we were after doing group meditation in the day at night, we were 8 or 10 guys sleeping in some straw in a cow barn. This is in Nepal, the Kopan Monastery. And we were supposed to meditate once in the evening before sleeping. So I would sit up and I would want to look like the last one to go to sleep. So other guys would start sitting there, and then one by one they would, after 10, 15 minutes, they would drop off and go to sleep. But I had this, I wanted to be seen as the last person on the cushion, right? King of the cushion. Now, in a way, okay, so that was a kind of an ego, but it helped me sit through the pain. And so it helped me to, even because of that, I was able to sit through the pain and develop the ability to sit in the lotus position for a long period of time and not to move and things like that. So, it's kind of catch-22. So, but later on, you give up these ideas, you can overcome that sense of the ego. But so sometimes that subtle kind of spiritual pride could help or could hinder, but it depends on the other aspects of your practice too. Or we had a practice of standing in a chow line. So it was an outdoor, and all the food was put up on tables and people were serving food. And usually there was enough for everybody to have one helping and maybe some people to have seconds. And so I always wanted to be the last person. I was trying to practice humbleness, but maybe that was a pride too, I don't know. But anyway, so I always let everyone else go first. I say, okay, if they run out of food, good. Then, I'll do without seconds. I don't need seconds. So I walked slower to the line and everybody else got in. There's a couple other people practicing the same way I was. So we would try to walk slower than each other so the other could go in front, So I could see the game that was being played, but still, finally then I just, gave up and, I let the other person be the last person for a while. And so, there are some games that go on the mind in the beginning, but that was my first meditation course and before I knew about these kind of things too much. But later, as you get more mature in the practice, then, those things, you learn how to deal with those subtler defilements. Okay, friends, those are all very good questions. And we came to the end of those. So now, as we have before, for those who need to take their rest, people living in Germany and other countries and where it's in the middle of the night, you can take your rest. For those who want to stay for the meditation, we'll take a couple minutes break to use the bathroom, drink a little bit of water, and we're going to do a few stretches, as I already mentioned, as we've normally been doing, and then have our meditation practice. Okay? So we'll see you in a couple minutes. We're going to be starting the yoga exercise now. Okay. Start to stand straight. Just gently close your eyes. Feel your feet pressing the floor. Just relax the shoulders. Feel the arms and hands hanging at the side. Feel the head balanced on top of the neck. And begin taking some deep, slow breaths. And try to take at least 3 seconds to slowly expand your abdomen, rib cage, and bring the air into the upper chest. Hold the air in the lungs for 3 seconds if you can. Allow the oxygen to get into the bloodstream, and then slowly breathe out. Feel that relaxing, longer contraction of the out breath. Just take another couple breaths like that. We coordinate these movements with that same type of deep, slow breathing, doing the movement while breathing in, holding the position with the air in the lungs for 2 or 3 seconds, and returning to the starting point on the out breath. So one of those whole rounds, repeating it 3 times. So each round of that in and out breathing would take, about 15 seconds. So you're learning how to slow down your breathing while doing the exercise. Okay, on the next in breath, raise the arms over the head, interlock the fingers, turn the palms up, straighten the arms, stretch your head back, try to arch your lower spine a little bit, and stretch upwards all at the same time. On the out breath, turn the palms down, touch the top of the head on the out breath. Okay, again, in breath, palms up, straighten the arms, the head back, stretch upwards. Out breath, touch the top of the head. Once more, in breath, palms up, stretch the head back. Hold that upward stretch longer. Feel the sensations. Release the fingers. On the out breath, lower the arms back to the sides. Then relax. Gently close the eyes. Try to feel the increased sensations in your hands and fingers. You should feel some tingling or vibration sensations, or the pulse of blood in the fingers. You might feel the touch of clothing against your chest or arms. And just mentally remember the present moment of standing, standing, standing. Just letting go of any sensual desire or ill will that comes into the mind. Letting go of the hindrances as you're standing and doing movement. Okay, then next on the in-breath, Push up on the toes while raising the arms over the head and stretch upwards. Face the palms toward each other about 6 inches apart. Stretch. Out breath. Arms back to the side, heels back to the floor. You can use the breathing to help lift and lower the body. So the in-breath, like blowing up a helium balloon, the body rises up. Stretch. Out. In-breath. Out. Relax. You just feel the body, keep the mind centered in the body. Feel where the clothing touches the skin on different places, or any increased body sensations. Just remember standing. Next, we'll do side bending using both arms. So on an in-breath, raise both arms up front over to the head. Keep the fingers and the arms straight, close to your head. On the out-breath, bend over the right side as far as you comfortably can. Feel the stretch in the side. Keep the arms parallel to each other. Don't let them go out like this. In-breath, lift up. And the other side, out-breath. In-breath, up. Again to the right, out-breath. In. Out. In. And once more to each side, out-breath. Now in the out-breath, lower both arms. Just relax. Just close the eyes. Keep this attention centered in the body. Feel the breathing. The other bodily sensations, clothing touching the skin. Just remember standing, standing, standing. One last exercise, the head turning to loosen up the neck vertebrae. So on an in-breath, turn your head to the right as far as you can. Try to look over your right shoulder. On the out-breath, turn 180 degrees back to the left. Look over the left shoulder. Concentrate into the neck vertebrae. In-breath to the right. Just imagine that in-breath, that oxygenated blood squirting oil between the neck vertebrae, loosening them up. Out breath back to the left. In breath to the right. Out breath left. On the next in breath, let the head stop in the center. Mentally feel the whole body. General sense of your feet pressing the floor, the arms and hands at the sides, clothing touching the skin on different places, the head balanced on top, standing, standing, standing. Start to feel that centeredness in the body. Here and now. Okay, now let's come back to your sitting place. And without getting too distracted, try to sit down and continue a breathing body awareness in the sitting position. So try to sit keeping the back and the head in a straight line. If you're sitting in a chair, try to come away. Don't lean against the back of the chair. I'm going to turn off my video so you won't be tempted to want to look at me. Keep your attention focused in your own body and mind. So first of all, just feel the body pressing the seat. Just turn the attention down to feel the buttocks and the feet pressing the floor. Just feel that contact or hardness where the buttocks and feet press the floor. The here and now. Then feel your hands and fingers touching. Feel some sensations in your fingers. And relax the shoulders. Feel the arms hanging down from the shoulders. And straighten up the back and the spinal column. Feel the head balanced on top of the neck or spinal column. It's like balancing a soccer ball on top of a broomstick. Try to find the center of gravity of the head and spine over the hips. Kind of that tipping point where the body could either tip backwards or tip forwards. And then just mentally feel that straight posture. Feel your face. Relax the face muscle. Feel the eyes and the sockets, and the eyelids stretched over the eyeball. From that point behind the eyes, see if you can kind of just mentally feel an image or outline of the sitting body, a general outline of the sitting body. Just mentally remember sitting, sitting. It's finding the door of the laboratory, the outline of the body, the external body is like coming to the door of the laboratory. And then begin some deep, slow breathing, like we were doing in the yoga class, like 3 or 4 seconds to slowly breathe in, expanding your abdomen, rib cage, and upper chest. Holding the air in the lungs, 2, 3, or 4 seconds to feel that pause, to feel the vibration of the present moment in the pause, and feel the relaxing contractions of the out breath, riding the contracting out breath down to the in, feel the last bit of air go out. Then the next in breath. Just take a few more deep, slow breaths like that, maintaining a good straight posture. Just thinking like this to yourself. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, sitting here and now. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, sitting here and now. Breathing in, abandoning sloth and torpor, mental and physical lethargy. Breathing out, concentrating here and now. Now we're going to counting our breaths from 1 to 10 to gain a better concentration. So if you can, continue to do some deeper, slower breathing, maybe not to such a great extent, to give some effort in having a slightly deeper breath, holding the air in for a second or 2 to feel the pause. Just focusing on the expanding and contracting sensations of the abdomen, rib cage, and chest. So with the next expanding in breath, mentally count to 1. Feeling the pause. With the contracting out breath, also count 1. Riding the contracting out breath down to the in. The next expanding in breath, counting 2. Holding in the breath moment. Contracting out breath, so count 2. Next expanding in breath, 3. The out breath 3. In breath 4. Out breath 4. In breath 5. Out breath 5. In breath 6. Out breath 6. In breath 7. Out breath 7. In breath 8. Out breath 8. In breath 9. Out breath 9. In breath 10. Out breath 10. Now discontinue the counting. Discontinue any controlling the breath. Let the breath return to its own uncontrolled rhythm, however it may go. But continue to feel it and observe its movements, the subtler movements, expanding and contracting in the center of the body. Or if you're feeling the air moving through the nostrils, it's knowing when the breath is coming in and knowing when the breath is going out. Knowing it by feeling it. You feel the touch sensation of the clothing against the skin of the abdomen or stomach or rib cage or chest as it expands or contracts. Or you feel the sensation at the tip of the nostril or as it's going in or out. Whichever helps you to stay more alert. Just try to feel the whole cycle of the breathing, the whole in-breath from beginning to end, the brief pause, and the whole out-breath from beginning to end, the brief pause. It's important to notice the pauses between the breaths, the pause that connects the in-breath to the out-breath, and the out-breath to the next in-breath. So the mind doesn't wander. Just try to notice how each breath is different. Sometimes it's a longer breath. Sometimes it's a shorter breath. Feeling the different little sensations of the breath. If you like, you can make these brief mental notes of the present moment. Just breathing in, sitting. Breathing out, sitting. Or just simply in, sitting. Out, sitting. That's the concentration on the present moment, to remember that the body is sitting and breathing here and now. But at the same time, be alert for the hindrances that might arise. Especially if you feel the spine slouching or the head drooping forward, to notice that slouching. Mindfully lift the chin, straighten the spine up straight. If any thoughts arise, notice that as with sensual desire or ill will. You can note the hindrance, but let go of it. Always coming back to feeling the breathing body. Back to in, sitting. Out, sitting. Especially with each out breath, just try to relax the body, relax the mind. If you notice any tension, just relaxing the body tension, relaxing any mental tension. Now with the mindfulness of breathing, you've opened the door of the laboratory, going inside, sit down at the microscope, looking down into the breathing process. Feel the subtle sensations connected with the breathing. So following the breathing with concentration is the concentration, but at the same time, alertness to the for hindrances arising is the mindfulness. If you're not mindful of the hindrances, it'll interrupt your concentration, get you distracted. You have to balance the mindfulness and concentration. If you have too many thoughts and you want to go back to counting the breaths from 1 to 10 again to help slow the mind down, you can do that. Or you can come back and do some deep, slow breathing. It would help you to stay focused, stay centered in the body. If you catch yourself totally lost in thoughts, recognize it as lost, lost. Find the body sitting on the ground here and now. Take a deep, slow breath. Bring the mind back into the body. Reestablishing, breathing in, sitting. Breathing out, sitting. Breath by breath. Moment by moment. If you already have a fairly good level of concentrated awareness, a few hindrances, you can also just open up to notice more sensations in the body, arising and vanishing, coming and going, in different places, itchy feelings, prickling feelings, aches or pains, pulsations. You don't have to look for them, just keep the mind open, relaxed, and naturally you will notice them in different places. Or you can move the attention through the body, feel the different body parts and some sensations, like feeling your feet and the hands, shoulders, the head, keeping your attention on those different spots for 15 or 20 seconds, a few more sensations. It's like turning up the power of a microscope to notice subtler, finer, kind of detailed sensations of impermanence. All these vibrations are changing, arising, lasting a few moments, vanishing. Just as the in-breath arises and vanishes, the out-breath arises and vanishes. Other sensations arise and vanish. Little pinpricks, stomach gurgling. So many different sensations. You can integrate the mindfulness of the body, like understanding this body as just being the 32 body parts. They're all vibrating, producing sensation, or even just the four elements of solidity, fluidity, heat, and motion. Body is just vibrating energy. And this mind is just a continuous stream of thoughts from the unconscious flowing through the awareness. Urges, wantings, without grasping them. Just let them arise, vanish. Just maintaining that connection with the breathing in the background, breathing body in the background. At the same time, different sensations coming and going, thoughts coming and going in the foreground. It's maintaining, developing mindfulness and concentration. Again, the concentration is staying in the present moment. The mindfulness is the alertness to see the changes within the present moment. If you can identify the five aggregates, this is form, feeling, perception, volition, consciousness. It's developing the Chintamaya Panya, the wisdom of reflection, reflective observation. Breathing in, sitting. Breathing out, sitting. Thoughts come and go. Sounds come and go. Different sensations of pleasure, discomfort, or pain come and go. Drowsiness comes and goes. Restlessness and worry come and go. These are all just the natural changing conditions, a flow of impermanence through this body and mind. Through the space of awareness, body-centered awareness. It's becoming the impartial witness. This is form, this is feeling, this is perception, this is volition, this is conditioning, this is ego consciousness. Is there really any owner or controller? Where is the owner or controller to any of this? That is the million-dollar question. If we lose that connection to the present moment of the breathing body, and the mind gets easily distracted, lost in the 5 hindrances, greed, hatred, and deluded thought, worry, fear, anxiety, confusion. That constant connection to the present moment, the breathing body, is the life preserver, the lifeline for the mind to stay afloat in the present moment with awareness and wisdom, not getting sunk, pulled under the waves. Sambi sankhara anicchati yada panyaya pasati atanibindati dukkhi Esamango visuddhya. All the conditioned things, the five aggregates of this body, mind, and world are impermanent. When one sees this with the eye of wisdom, one becomes disenchanted with suffering. This is the path to freedom. Thus spoke the Buddha. And now let's spend the last few minutes of the meditation in cultivating whatever insights or mental relaxation we got from the meditation. Let's again take a few deep, slow breaths to oxygenate the blood, send metta to our own body and mind. So when you expand your abdomen, rib cage, and chest, hold the air in the lungs for as long as you comfortably can, 5 or 6 seconds. And just imagine kind of that oxygen getting into the bloodstream and being carried out to all the remote corners of the body and mind, nervous system, kind of tranquilizing them, healing them, being the metta, and feel that relaxation on the out breath. Just feel the body and mind relaxing, feel that pleasant sensation. Just take a few deep, slow breaths like that again, just oxygenating the body and mind. That oxygen is like the metta, sending metta to your own body, mind, nervous system, pleasant healing energy. Feeling that relaxing sensation on the out breath. And then thinking along these lines to yourself. So taking a few more breaths. May I be well, peaceful, and mindful. May I be free from excessive attachment and greed, anger or hatred, fear or ignorance. May I be free from the pains and sufferings of body and mind brought about by such unskillful thought, speech, and actions. And may I have the patience, strength, mindfulness, and wisdom to meet and overcome all difficulties in life. Maybe I'll be able to continue to develop the Noble Eightfold Path, develop insight into the Four Noble Truths. In the practice of meditation, developing mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom to help overcome confusion and self-created suffering. May I be well, mindful, and wise. If you can, continue to take some more deep breaths, and with each out breath, imagine sending these same thoughts to your parents, even if they've already passed away, or other people, friends who've died, or your other living relatives, family members, relatives, good friends. So with each out breath, just imagine those waves of metta, wisdom, energy, awareness. going out to them, entering their bodies and minds with the idea that may all of them be well, happy and peaceful, free from pains and sufferings of self-created suffering from their unmindful thoughts and actions. And they also have the patience, strength, mindfulness, and wisdom to meet and overcome all difficulties in life. If they haven't already, may they be able to hear the teachings of the Dhamma, to learn and practice meditation, to help free their minds from confusion and suffering. May they be well, peaceful, and wise. And then in a general sense, again with each out-breath, just imagine these waves of metta vibrations of friendliness, best wishes for all beings, radiating out like heat radiating out of a wood stove furnace, going over the hills and the valleys, through the towns and the cities, tranquilizing the fear and worry and anxieties, greed and hatred of people's minds. Just with each out-breath, just imagine those vibrations extending further and further out across the whole country, in all the 10 directions across the oceans, to all the continents, and eventually surrounding the whole earth. With the idea that may all living beings, wherever they might be, visible or invisible, large or small, famous or obscure, may all living beings be well, happy and peaceful, free from worry, fear, anxiety, greed, hatred, and delusion. May all beings have the patience, strength, mindfulness, and wisdom to meet and overcome all difficulties in life. May all beings have the opportunity to hear the teachings of the Dhamma, to learn and practice meditation, cultivate mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom, to free their minds from confusion and suffering. May all beings be able to live peacefully and harmoniously together, understanding the karmic interconnectedness and interdependence of all things. May all beings be well, peaceful, and wise. May all beings be well, peaceful, and wise. Just like a mantra reverberating throughout space. Well, peaceful, and wise. Kapata chani dukkha bhayapata chani bhaya sokapata chani soka hontu sabbi pipanino. May the suffering be free from suffering. May the fear struck be free from fear. May the grieving be free from grief. In this way may all beings live with mindfulness and wisdom. Thus spoke the Buddha. If you like to join in chanting sadhu 3 times slowly with the breathing, we do the chanting on a long out breath. So take a deep in breath. Sadhu. 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 Okay, friends. So that brings our, today's session of Dhamma talk and meditation to an end. But as I always say, meditation should never end, and whatever we do on the cushion should be, mindfully, methodically integrated into our daily life to maintain that kind of mindfulness and wisdom in our reactions out in the world, especially now that, little by little, the coronavirus restrictions on traveling and so on might start loosening up. People might be starting to, go here and there more, interact with others. And so to be able to maintain our mindfulness and awareness of the hindrances and, learning how to always to practice the M&Ms, to always come back to the present moment of the body, once an hour by stopping and taking a couple deep, slow breaths, and coming back to the present moment, letting go of whatever you might have been doing, worrying about. Touch base with that present moment vibration, and then continue to go on with your activities. So anyway, I'm glad you could all come and participate. And again, remember, mindfulness a day keeps
dukkha away.
Right, okay. At least you remember one thing. Good. Okay.